Yes, it's recorded.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the Montgomery County MUD number 47 Board of Directors meeting for Tuesday, January the 19th, 2021. Hope everyone is doing well. Appreciate everyone's patience as the district continues to meet remotely due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through the meeting procedures and then we'll perform a roll call for everyone in the meeting. So to begin with, need to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely this evening so we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. Starting with our board of directors, Anthony Cardell.
Present.
Paul Brown.
Present.
Paul, are you in the meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
present.
Laura Norton.
Here.
Cynthia Ullman.
Present.
Jennifer Ronk.
Here.
That completes the roll call for our directors. We'll move on to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney. Maureen Bourgeois.
Present.
Jeannie Scott.
Here.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Here.
Any other members of Woodlands Water staff in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly.
Present.
Chris Meeks.
Present.
Matt Corley.
Present.
Any other members of the River Authority in the meeting?
I do not see any, Brian.
Okay, we'll move on to district consultants. Do we have any MUD 47 consultants in the meeting?
John Knox, Cox and Company.
Jan Bartholomew, R.W. Baird.
This is Brian. Any other district consultants in the meeting? If not, do we have any developer representatives in the meeting?
Yes, you do. Dan Kokarsh with the Howard Hughes Corporation is in the meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well.
This is Mark Unlin.
Arthur Bredoff, taxpayer resident.
Marianne Braid.
This is Nicholas Garcia.
This is Brian. Do we have any other residents in the meeting? Or members of the public? All right, if there are no other members of the public, that will conclude the roll call. I'll hand it back over to Anthony to begin the agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. So number 2, receive comments from the public. Are there any members of the public that have comments today? And I don't have a timer on me, but I do want to reiterate that we have a 3-minute time limit.
This is Mark Unlin.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Anthony. Over the past several months has been a kind of a regular discussion regarding the development up around 1488. But up until now, that discussion really hasn't addressed the decision that the board has to make on behalf of the residents. I mean, we've been discussing whether or not the area should be developed, but that's really not a decision of the board. That's a decision of the developer, and it discussed whether or not the area should be developed now. But again, that's a decision of the developer. And we've even heard discussion about whether the infrastructure should be built, but again, that's going to be built in any case, so that's really not a decision of the board. And I even heard a discussion about the revenue stream from the development to the MUD, but that revenue stream is going to flow in all cases. The only decision of the board is whether residents should fund the infrastructure. Up until now, there's been no justification provided, or at least none that I've heard, that would support resident funding. And until somebody provides some justification in open public meetings, you have no basis for using resident funds to build infrastructure for a developer. So you can't claim that you're working on behalf of the residents if you use their money without justification. So until somebody provides that justification in open public meetings, you should be voting no for resident funding of any development projects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Are there any other comments from the public? No? Okay. Hearing no other comments from the public, we'll move on to item number 3. Consider an act on a request for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district.
Hi, this is Jeannie, and I don't have any.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jeannie. Mike?
This is Mike. I have nothing this month either.
Great. All right. So we'll consider that item closed, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. I guess I will read that out loud to give everyone on the phone a chance to know what we're consenting to. Cynthia, the whole board, if you need us to stop and remind you what these items are, feel free to speak out, and we can probably at least talk about what they are without removing them from the consent agenda. I want everyone to feel confident on what they're consenting to. So number 4, review and act on the minutes of the December 2020 Board of Directors meeting. Number 5, review and act on the financial reports and disbursements of December 2020. Number 6, receive and act upon the monthly investment reports and quarterly investment reports for the period of October through December 2020. Number 7, receive the tax collector's report. Number 8, define and act on approving attendance and expenses for district and or Woodlands Water Trustee business. Number 9, receive the San Jacinto River Authority / Woodlands Division report. Number 10, adoption of resolution authorizing an additional penalty on delinquent personal property taxes and authorize delinquent tax attorney to collect delinquent personal property taxes beginning April 1, 2021, including the filing of lawsuits as necessary. And number 11, adoption of resolution adopting list of qualified brokers authorized to engage in investment transactions with the district. Are there any questions on those items?
Anthony, this is Paul. I just have a question regarding the San Jacinto River Authority Division report. Does this acceptance of this in the consent agenda preclude discussion of the report?
Well, we can remove it from the consent agenda to specifically discuss that item if you'd like.
Yeah, can we do that so that we get an actual report on the items listed and have discussion on that particular agenda item when we get to it?
All right. Brian, can you give me some guidance and make sure that I do this properly?
This is Brian. Yes, if any director asks for an item to be removed, then it is just removed to the regular agenda and will be considered as the next item under the regular agenda after action's been taken to approve the consent agenda, excluding the one item that's been removed.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda now then.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we're going to approve the the consent agenda, items 1 through 8, and item number 10, and move item number 9 to the regular agenda. Is that your motion, Laura?
Yes.
Okay.
10 and 11.
10 and 11. Thank you, Mike. Okay.
And I'll
so-
second it.
All right. So I guess I can't do all in favor. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Cynthia, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay. And Jennifer?
Aye.
All right. Do I need to call everyone else out, Brian, or since they made the motion the second, they can't vote?
This
again?
is Brian. We do have to do a roll call vote on each motion. So after there's been a motion and a second, if there's no further discussion, then we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay. All right. So Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura? Oh, she's on mute.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Laura, and I vote aye. So we'll move on. Now we're to item number 9, receive the San Jacinto River Authority and Woodlands Division report.
Well, good evening. This is Chris.
Yeah,
Meeks.
Chris. Sorry.
Well, I just want to ask Paul if you had any direct questions you want us to cover, or if you'd just like Matt to go through the report briefly.
No, I would like one of the items. I'm trying to find the page. This is a thick report this month. What I'd like you to speak to, Chris, is the item regarding a broken water, I believe it's a water pipe that ran on, I believe, Woodlands Parkway to 2978.
Sure thing. So that is on page 27 in your packet. It's the one of the pages of our monthly report. And basically what you're going to see on that page is on the left-hand side, you'll see a 16-inch PVC water main that broke on December 22nd. On the right-hand side, you'll see a 16-inch PVC sewer force main that broke on December 25th. Both of them, of course, have been repaired up to now. In doing the repair on the 16-inch PVC water main, which by the way broke at roughly 2978 Woodlands Parkway, give or take in front of that Memorial Hermann urgent care facility that's there. But when we had repaired that line, and we've repaired that line quite a bit, and to roughly tell you on that PVC line, it runs from Lake Woodlands and Woodlands Parkway to give or take 2978 and Woodlands Parkway. We've had numerous breaks over the last 10 plus years on that line. But when we're doing the repair, it appeared to be from the break, as well as what we saw when we actually dug up the line, that there's a lack of bedding, which caused the break. Bedding is basically, if you imagine the pipe sitting on pillows, if you will. And so the pillows are sand in most cases. There's other materials that can be used, but sand is usually what's used. So when the line was excavated to be repaired and we were digging back to actually repair it to good line, we've noticed, like we have on several other occasions, that there was a lack of this bedding material underneath the actual pipe itself. And that is for just a general moving of the land as it occurs, seasonal rain, so on and so forth. So bedding is very important. Bedding is something that can be skimped on by a contractor occasionally. So it's very important to have construction management inspectors and engineers, of course, involved when these lines are being installed to make sure everything is done according to plan. That 16-inch PVC water line was installed, I think it was said 2003. It was installed by the developer under a MUD project and then passed over to the River Authority at the time. On the right-hand side of that page, you'll see the 16-inch PVC force main. If you'll notice in that picture, the crack starts at that kind of flared portion of the pipe and it runs just pretty much straight down the middle of it. When you see that, it's typically due to what we call overbelling, which is where you take one pipe and insert it too far into the other pipe. Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes because there was a mechanical means to push the pipe together. Could be a host of reasons, but overbelling is the case in that one. And that also goes back to something that the inspectors, construction managers, engineers, so on and so forth, need to watch for whenever the project's being taken care of and installed. So both projects have been completed, wrapped up. Sewer force main, we were lucky in a sense that force main's off at lift station 24. Lift station 24 actually has 2 lift stations on site. And so as soon as the break was identified, we were able to shut down one lift station, transfer all the flow to the other lift station, and then send the flow out from there. So did that answer your questions?
I guess my follow-up to your presentation, which is great. I'm sure you didn't own this installation of pipe because it was, it's quite old. How many, when did the problems with this pipe start, and how often was it repaired?
So from recollection, talking to staff, I've been at the River Authority for just over, actually going on 11 years now. But I can recall breaks to roughly back about 10 years ago. And on average, it's about 2 to 3 breaks per year. What we're currently doing is going back through all of our work orders and our history of staff knowledge, and identifying the locations of those breaks and putting them on a paper map. And we're going to try to get those to Jim for inclusion in next month's report. So
Okay.
you can see where the breaks are.
And I guess my next follow-on question is, a while ago, San Jacinto gave us a deck, or presented a deck that talked about expenditures on infrastructure over the next 10 years, okay? Somewhere between 150 million and I guess it was upwards of 200 million potentially. Is this an item that would be included in that replacement?
So currently, and you're talking about the 10-year project plan, which we will be presenting
Yeah,
here in a couple months,
absolutely.
just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Currently, that project is not a named project in the 10-year project plan, but since this last break did occur and it was the same situation, we do have funds in the 10-year project plan for water line replacement. And we are considering if that is one of those lines that needs to go ahead of some of these other AC lines and stuff, since it is a known failure with 2 to 3 per year. Not the catch, if you will, it's a service versus cost. Each of the repairs is give or take $20,000, $25,000. People are out of service. This last break, the emergency center, urgent care over there was out without water, but the line to replace is going to be an easy $5 to $7, maybe even $10 million plus.
For this particular line?
If we replace the length of it from Lake Woodlands and Woodlands Parkway, which is essentially Kirkendall, all the way to 2978, it's going to be a lot of funds to replace it. So it's something we've kind of kicked around before, but with the repair cost being $25,000, it's one of those that we originally said, well, okay, maybe we can just find the bad parts and fix it. But at this point in time, with these habitual repairs needing to be done, it may be better to just replace the entire line.
Okay, I guess the other question I have is, so you referenced 50 years of service. Typically it should last 50 years, but or optimally perhaps it clearly should last 50 years. So what, do you have numbers on the mean time to failure for this kind of an installation? Or do we not have any insight to that?
On this particular line, that's the information that we're kind of gathering right now. And that's why the 2 to 3 breaks per year, it's roughly every 4 months or so, this line has ruptured on average. In some, I think it was 2 or 3 Christmases ago, we had 2 breaks in one day, and then one day the one break immediately following that day. So 3 breaks in 2 days. Very short mean time to failure on that case. But on average, it's about every 4 months or so, there is a rupture.
Yeah. Okay. Is it a small group of customers who are impacted, or a large group of customers who are impacted?
Very good question. And that, of course, depends on where the actual break
happens.
This last time, I want to say there was about 3 to 4 businesses affected, the most important being the critical care facility, Memorial Hermann. The one that I spoke about earlier, where there was those 3 breaks over 2 days, there was actually 2 large subdivisions outside of water. So Woodlands Water, Randy went over there and helped us find ways to bypass to give some of them water. But in that case, there was give or take 500 homes with no water for just about 24 hours. And that was one of the worst ones. And since then, we've gone in and put some valves in that location so that won't occur again in that area. But it's very heavily dependent on where the break occurs and if there's valves to isolate the actual flow.
Mhm. Okay.
I have a few questions. When you okay, so when you find a section that's broken, how much do you replace each time? Is it just where it breaks, or can you replace larger sections?
When it breaks, it's usually under an emergency condition. So what we do is we look at it, and typical is to replace just one joint of pipe. Joint of pipe is give or take 10 foot. And so if we dig up the line and we see it's just one joint of pipe that's broken, we'll typically go back to the next good joint on both sides, and then what we call sleeve a piece in, so put a piece in that location.
Okay, and for each time this breaks, are the residents, or do they have like a burn notice? Oh, no, not burn notice, boil. I'm sorry, a boil notice until their water is safe to drink again?
This is Chris Meeks. I forgot to mention that before, but there's actually another burn notice you can issue. It depends on how the break occurs and when it does. So the one where there were those large residents outside of water, there was a specific disinfection procedure that we followed. It was not a boil water notice. It includes bacteriological sampling, very, very high chlorine dosages injected into the pipe, cleaned out, flushed out and stuff. But if we don't do the very high chlorine disinfection, there is a boil water notice that'll last generally about 3 to 5 days, as long as everything is clear.
Okay.
Are all the breaks in the water main happening due to lack of bedding?
The ones that we've seen so far have been due to lack of bedding. We haven't seen, there's been no breaks due to somebody drilling into it. We have not seen any overbelling from the pictures and some of the pipe we've seen before that we've dug up. So everything we've seen so far, it's been due to lack of bedding.
Okay. And the sewer main, we're talking specifically about the water main here, right? We're not seeing constant fixes on the sewer main too, are we?
Correct. At this point in time, this is the first, knock on wood, sewer main or gravity sewer that we've had to repair in a number of years.
Okay. So broadly, is this the only water main that we're seeing with this kind of a problem with bedding, or do we have others that have the same problem?
Very good question. So thinking about that and going back and looking at just the Woodlands over the last 10 years, the vast majority of water main breaks that we've been having is on this Lake Woodlands to 2978 water line. There have been some, we're starting to see the AC water lines. We've talked about, as Paul mentioned earlier, this deck of the 150 to 200 million that we provide. There are AC water lines. Their service life is just about up. They were installed in the mid-70s, and it's give or take 50 years. So that service life is just about up. We're starting to see slowly AC water lines are starting to break more and more. The thing with PVC water mains is they should theoretically last minimum of 50, max of 100. Of course, PVC hasn't been out 100 years, so it's untrue at this point, but
yeah.
Supposed to. AC water lines, I am fully expecting to start having issues as well.
And my final question would be pretty parochial. Was this a Mud 47 event or somebody else's event?
This is a Woodlands event.
Woodlands wide event.
Woodlands wide event. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that since the water lines do not just serve one mud, they serve all muds, right?
Right. Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I've got one quick question.
Sure.
The groundwater surface water mix seems to have flip-flopped the last couple of months. I was just wondering if you could tell me why.
Sure, that's an ongoing discussion at the plant, and Woodlands Division. So what we had noticed is come the winter time, it's very easy for the surface water flow to overtake the groundwater flow and just, go a lot higher than the 65-35 blend, which by the way is an annual average. So throughout the year, you'll see a kind of roller coaster. But what occurred this year is since 2020 was drier and drier longer. I mean, December, we had some pretty good flows of water leaving out. What we came across was our groundwater permit through Lone Star, we were going to exceed it. So rather than use more groundwater and keep satisfy demand, we upped the surface water to try to reduce the groundwater usage, not bust out the permit, and of course, help with all that. So what you're going to start seeing over the next few months, excuse me, is that surface water, groundwater is going to start kind of leveling out a little bit to where it should be. Then if we have a hot summer, all bets are off. So
Fair enough. Okay, thanks, Chris.
Okay, any other questions for Chris? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division report?
Yes, I will make that motion. Thank you.
Okay, in a second.
This is Cynthia. I'll second.
Okay, I heard both Jennifer and Cynthia, so thank you. Paul, how do you vote?
On again. Aye.
Okay. Laura,
Aye.
Cynthia,
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Okay, I vote aye, and we'll move on to number 12, review and consider approval of district's fiscal year 2019 to 2020 draft audit report. So here we have John Knox.
Thank you, Anthony. John Knox with Knox Cox and Company. I'll try and be brief. If you've had a chance to look at the report, and I hope you have, page 1 and 2 are our opinion, which is unqualified, and that's what we want. And it's been unqualified the entire time, so no issues there. If you turn to page 12, it's your statement of activities and governmental funds. We had a significant increase in our fund equity, but that was due to the bond sale. And we had our statement of our net position increased by nearly $2 million as well. Nothing really to report there. I just wanted to highlight that. I did want to mention on page 32, we did note the COVID pandemic in words that just says that we don't know how it's going to affect us and hope it doesn't, but it is disclosed in the notes. And finally, on page 46, I already see 3 terms of office that are incorrect. I'll get those updated. But if any board members see any other changes, misspellings, titles, so forth and so on, as of 9/30/20, I would appreciate any input. And with that, I'd open it up to questions and ask for a approval subject to any changes, minor changes that your consultants or the board may have.
Any questions?
No, I guess the only question I have is, I presume that our financial person who resides in Woodlands Water and provides us with financial services has seen this and signed off on this for us to see.
Yeah, and let me make that point. The administrative staff, the financial staff of the Woodlands Water Authority is doing an exceptional job for us, and we don't have significant adjustments or variances, and we have an audit communication letter referencing that. But Maureen has had a chance, and I think Jim as well, to look at it. And I don't think they have any issues, but they can speak up if they do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick comment that we reviewed and adjusted our fund balance after fiscal year, so beginning October 1. But our audited reserve, right, our month's cash is 5.3, right? So it's less than what we looked at when we reviewed it. And that's going to be because of audit. My assumption is audit adjusted entries. So, you know, we use the full accrual method for the full accrual method is used for audit, and those get picked up that may not have been on our monthly report when we reviewed it in October or November. That being said, do I hear a motion to approve the annual audit?
I move to approve the annual audit.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. All right. So, Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
And Jennifer?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. And we will move on to, thank you, John. Appreciate it. We will move on to item number 13.
This is Brian. So the item there is part and parcel with the approval of the audit. We're required by law pursuant to legislation that was passed a few sessions ago to provide information to the comptroller regarding the financial condition of the district, as well as some other factual information. The district is able to comply with this requirement by having the auditor produce a copy of the finalized audit to the comptroller, and that satisfies our compliance with the provisions set forth in section or item number 13 on the agenda. So we do need a motion to authorize John and his group to prepare and submit the information for the special purpose district public information database to the comptroller by the statutory deadline, which is April the 1st.
Okay.
I move that we meet that deadline.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Paul. And Laura, how do you vote?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
And Jennifer?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thanks again, John. And then we'll move on to item number 14.
Thank y'all.
Grant exemptions from taxation for 2021 and the adoption of a resolution in connection therewith.
This is Brian. So this is another one of our January annual administrative items. You'll see a draft of the resolution on pages 33 and 34 of your packet. That resolution does incorporate the same exemptions for 2021 as what the board adopted for 2020, which is an over 65 and disabled exemption of $30,000 and a general residential homestead exemption of 20%. We do need a motion to approve the resolution for 2021 exemptions. If there is a desire by the board to change the exemptions that were granted in 2020, now would be the time to consider any of those changes.
Just to refresh my memory, aren't we maxed out on these? Or I know maybe for the homestead, but maybe not for the seniors. I'm not sure where we're at on those.
This is Brian. That's correct. All the districts in the Woodlands have adopted, in Woodlands Water, have adopted the maximum 20% general residential homestead exemption. Districts vary on the over 65 and disabled. Some don't grant it at all. Most grant something ranging from pretty much 10 to 30 or so thousand. I can't recall off the top of my head if we have anybody higher than 30%, but 30 is on the higher end of the spectrum.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So do I have a motion to approve the grant exemptions?
I make a motion to approve the grant exemptions.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
And Jennifer?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. And then number 15, receive the attorney's report.
This is Brian. The only item of a general nature I have to report this evening is the legislature did kick off its 2021 session last week. As expected, Dave Phelan was selected as the new speaker in place of the former speaker, Bonin. They're still working through the logistics of how they're going to handle consideration of bills, including committee hearings and testimony, whether there will be hearings and testimony, and if so, will it be in person or virtual or some combination of the two? So they're still working through those logistics. Nothing to report in terms of specific bills at this point, early in the session, of course, but as bills come up that could have a material impact on the business of the district, we'll bring those to your attention. And that's all I have this evening.
All right, thank you, Brian. I don't think we need to make a motion on this one. Is that correct?
This is Brian. That's correct.
Okay. So we're moving on to number 16, receive the general manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the trustee meeting, we received a presentation from Matt Corley with San Jacinto River Authority regarding our grand accounting, the 6th and final grand accounting. I think the data and the information that was presented is very good information, and I'd like to share it with all the MUDs, and actually intended to have it in your package this month, but it got omitted. So we're going to have it as a separate agenda item and include it in your packets next month. There was a lengthy discussion at the trustee meeting regarding the wastewater treatment consolidation concept. No action was taken. I will report that the committee working with the San Jacinto River Authority staff and Woodlands Water staff met the Monday before the trustee meeting and looked at a number of factors regarding this topic, including impacts to retail sewer rates, schedules for performing an analysis or a feasibility study, the scope of work, public engagement, what that might look like with some of the newer requirements for the San Jacinto River Authority, but it was no action was taken. It will be presented back at the trustees in February. Regarding public engagement, I had mentioned, I think at a prior meeting, that the Sunset Commission review was gave a directive to the San Jacinto River Authority to get more involved in public education and engagement with its wholesale customers, meaning your MUD residents. They've asked the River Authority to engage and educate your MUD residents more on what they do and how they do it. As an example, we're currently working on an information sheet that would be sent to our residents about how the San Jacinto River Authority adopts and reviews the GRP rates up at the Lake Conroe Dam site, how they review and adopt their Woodlands Water wholesale water and sewer rates. So that information will be pushed out to the Woodlands residents here in the near future. And that's just an example of kind of the enhanced public outreach that the Sunset Commission is requesting the San Jacinto River Authority do. And President Hurd appointed an ad hoc committee to work with our staff and the River Authority staff to how to go maneuver and go through that kind of an awkward relationship or awkward PR. But I think we've got some ground rules set, and I think you'll be seeing the results of that. Ron Kelling did report that the summary judgment that was found in favor of the San Jacinto River Authority has been appealed by the city of Conroe, and they made a unique request to jump the appellate court process and go straight to the Supreme Court. So Ron, if you'd like to weigh in on that, please.
You explained it correctly. We went into Travis County Court. Conroe has, as Jim has said, has appealed, but they've asked the Supreme Court to take on the case, not the appellate court. And so we'll see what the Supreme Court does. It's a very unusual move. It happens. It's very unique. It happens very rarely. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Also in your packet is a monthly report with our engagement with HARC regarding the groundwater consortium. So if you've got any questions on that, I'll be happy to address those. We also had discussed at the trustee meeting, we're installing poles around the Woodlands to help with transmit the signals from the upgraded water meters. That meter transmits a signal out to like a repeater pole that then the data comes back to our office. We're utilizing elevated storage tanks that are currently existing by the San Jacinto River Authority, existing towers with the township where possible. But the project did have the installation of 7 new poles. And we've had a couple of residents that have complained about the view. The pole is impairing their view, and they want some consideration. And so I'm going to be meeting with those 2 residents over the next few weeks and report back to the trustees in February on that topic. There is a flyer in your packet regarding a webinar on subsidence that's going to be hosted by Intera, very well respected, well-known geology or geotechnical company, geoscience company. I would encourage you, if you have the time, to sign up and attend that subsidence webinar. Also in your packet is a copy of what is referred to in our policy manual as our content agreement. This is the agreement that's typically executed between MUDS and the developer in anticipation of a developer project going in, which talks about reimbursement to the developer. There's been some questions about this agreement and maybe updating it. So I wanted everybody to at least see a copy and get familiar with it. It's going to be discussed at next month's trustee meeting and then the MUD meetings following that. We've had some requests to maybe Brian and I look at it and consider updating it some. So now you know what it is, what it looks like, and we'll be talking more about it next month. And that concludes my report, and I'm available for questions.
Jim, I have a question. The webinar, can you have staff send that information out to directors?
Absolutely. I'll have Shelley do an email to all MUD directors, yes.
And just a comment for everybody in the meeting, there was, and maybe many of you saw it, there was an interesting article in the New York Times 2 Sundays ago in the weekend section on water. Fairly extensive, having more to do with west of us. But what was incredibly interesting was the increasing role of hedge funds in driving water pricing, which, and this was the only thing in the article, obviously, but it piqued my interest because the comments were made that water is cheap. Okay, so hedging obviously is something that some funds are interested in. One of which, frankly, is backed by one of the largest insurance companies in America. So anybody who has access to the Times, you may want to take a look at that. Okay. And then in the public comments area, Jim, I have, I guess it's page 62. Is that your report or the trustee meeting? No, this is a trustee meeting summary. You're not doing that, right?
No, sir. That would be your trustee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions for Jim? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to item number 17. Consider and act on supporting Dr. Neil Gaynor and Stephanie Zerchi as alternate MUD 7 as voting members to the Texas Water Development Board San Jacinto River Basin Regional Planning Group. I saw a lot of emails and notes coming through regarding this, so please fill me in.
Let me just try to summarize. The 86th legislative session tasked the Texas Water Development Board with administering the Flood Infrastructure Fund and coming up with a regional flood planning group. One of those flood planning groups covers the San Jacinto River Basin. I think there are 12 members to that group. We tried to get one of our MUD direct, Stephanie, on that, and we were outnumbered by the MUDs in Harris County, Fort Bend County, south of us. So we weren't successful. And what ended up, we really don't have any representation from Montgomery County other than the San Jacinto River Authority has a seat at that board, but it's their employee, Matt Barrett. And a number of our elected officials and others felt like Montgomery County really should be represented in this effort. And they expended a tremendous amount of energy and outreach to try to get this group to add some more voting members. Last week, we thought we were on the edge of being successful in that effort. There was a kind of a quick move to get Neil Gaynor and Stephanie to be seated as voting members and alternates on this. The short report is that effort did not pass. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future, but it was not approved by the board at their January meeting. There's going to be another meeting, I think February the 11th. So many folks are still very hopeful and optimistic that we're going to get that board to approve at least one more voting membership for MUD districts or water districts. So in an effort to anticipate that success soon, we would like all the MUDs to unanimously support these two. So when and if we get that position approved, we can send a letter of endorsement and show some, I guess, some support for all of our MUDs to get this representation for the Montgomery County area. And I know Laura was actively involved in this. Laura, did I leave out anything?
No, you hit it all. I guess if I think of anything, I'll put it in the trustee report. I would like to make a motion that we support Neil Gaynor and Stephanie Zertucci for the Region 6 floodplain group.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So Paul Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. And we will move on to number 18, discuss partnership for another core site.
So I'd like to take this one so I can explain why it's on our agenda. I sent news, the press release that came out about the Yours Cores to constituents in Alden Bridge. And the president of the Alden Bridge Village Association asked me, Laura, is this something that Alden Bridge should do? Because that Yours Cores was supported by the Grogan's Mill Village Association to the tune of $1,000. So I called Mike Turco of the Harris Galveston Subsidence District. And at the time, his first reaction was, yes, let's go ahead and do that. So I pursued it with ABVA. And they were supportive of it. So I thought, well, the next step is we should bring it to the MUD 47 board. Well, this afternoon I heard that Mike Turco looked at a map and he saw that we have plenty of cores, and it sounds like beer, but those are continuously operating reference stations. And what we really need is an extensometer in the Jasper Aquifer. Now, an extensometer is $1 million, but there are a lot of entities, and maybe we can find support for that in our community because of the subsidence that's going to be caused by the Jasper Aquifer lower water tables. So that's why it was on the agenda. So I'm kind of just pulling it off the agenda, and I'm giving you the reason why. So that's it.
Okay, so are you proposing that that this be a group event, or in terms of the funding of $1 million, or are you suggesting that we should pay, meaning Woodland should pay $1 million to have this utility in place?
Well, we'll see what happens. I am not bringing that up right now. Turco's Christmas list would be an extension.
Okay.
$1 million. So
Great.
Sounds
Thank
like we're
you.
going to table this until we figure out what we need.
Right.
Right. Okay. All right. So do I need to make a how do I table something?
Would you?
Brian?
This is Brian. There's no formal action. I don't think that's necessary on this. We can just defer consideration.
Okay. So, oh yeah, we're just discussing anyway. Okay. All right. Thank you. And we will move on to number 19, approve a resolution authorizing the submittal of the 2021 Water Smart application.
This is my routine item every January. This will be our 16th year associating all the Woodlands MUDs with the Water Smart program. For Cynthia and some of the newer ones, it doesn't cost anything to join this group. What it is, it's a water conservation, water smart program offered by AWBD. We've been members since 2005, like I said, and it's just a matter of filling out the application, submitting it by March 1st. Now, what's different this year is they've asked us not only to submit the resolution signed by the president and the secretary of each board, they also want to copy the minutes where the item is discussed at each board. So I don't know if they've got some rogue districts applying without approval or what, but so I do need the approval for this month, assuming you want to continue along your partnership with Water Smart.
Well, look, can I ask a question?
March 1st.
That's
Yes, go
interesting,
ahead.
Mike, because I had some questions which you've mostly answered, but I wanted to approve it so we didn't have to see this. You didn't need it every year. That was, why do we need to do this every year? But
Yeah, well, this is Mike. I did write a letter to the AWBD Water Smart Committee a couple of years ago to ask them to declare us a legacy member, and they declined to offer that to me.
Paul, you had a question?
Oh, I had basically the same question you had.
Yeah, more like a comment, right?
I mean, we were the first group, one of the first groups to initiate this, weren't we, Mike?
Yes, sir. I believe it started in 2002, and I hired on in 2004, and we were a member since 2005. So we're one of the first 25 that joined.
So can I get a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the submittal of the 2021 Water Smart application?
I'll make that. I'll make that motion.
Okay, Laura, or I'm sorry.
Yeah, second.
Anyone second? I'm sorry, pick someone. All right, thank you, Laura. Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. And we'll move on to item number 20, receive the Woodlands Water Trustees Report.
So I'm in concurrence with everything in the trustee meeting summary that's on page 60. Down at the bottom of the first page there, it talks about the consolidation of the wastewater plants. That led to a bit of a quarrel that was ostensibly about Robert's Rules of Order and how to take a motion that had been tabled off the table to vote on it, which was premature because there was no extra information or anything like that. But it went back and forth, and when people are arguing over Robert's Rules of Order, there's probably something wrong with the underlying, and that's the drift that I'm getting. I understand that some of the trustees are insulted by a public open comment that was made during the meeting. You'll see about that on page 62, where it says that our plant hadn't been reinvested in the past 40 years. So there's a belief that the plant is in good operating shape. And I think that that's the underlying. No vote was made and no extra information was added. So that, I think, does a good characterization of where we are with the centralization of the plant. Under the GM report, the first paragraph, we're talking there about the San Jacinto River Basin Regional Floodplain Group. And it's the very last sentence says that the SJRA has an employee rep on that board, and that it says that otherwise we're not represented. Well, I think he literally represents SJRA, so we are not represented at all. What the real problem is the Texas Water Development Board, when they created these regional flood planning groups, they defined that these groups need to have geographical diversity, among other things. And if you see a map of this watershed, Montgomery County is huge, and it is the only county that's completely in the watershed, and we don't have one person on that board. And in the deliberations from this board, they said things like, well, we don't want to add another member because that would dilute our vote. So Texas Water Development Board thought they'd send this to the region and they would make their board inclusive of the region, and they're not doing that at all. So we have reached out to Crichton's office, he was a sponsor of the Senate Bill number 8. And we've reached out to Toth's office, and involved in this is Dr. Shelley Sekula Gibbs and Director Reeser from the township, as well as me, Neil Gaynor, and Stephanie Zertucci. So we're doing everything we can. We've written a press release. It would not go out from Woodlands Water or from our respective MUDs. It is a press release that would be published by One Water or from the township. That's up to them, but it should be out maybe tonight or tomorrow. And it explains that. Our concern just generally about flooding in our area is all the watersheds, of course, start in Montgomery County. We've got big ones, Spring Creek, Lake Creek, and West Fork of the San Jacinto in our area. If any of you saw the Facebook post about the dog that fell down a big ravine and broke his leg, that was Lake Creek. So what I mean by that, if you didn't see that, is this was an amazing picture of what the water has done through there. And of course, we've had lots of flood victims along there. There's a development called Audubon Magnolia that's in, of course, it's in Magnolia, and it's 5,000 acres and doesn't have detention. It goes to Mill Creek, which goes to Spring Creek. So I think that it's important that we get a seat at the table to talk about the importance of drainage standards and solving our drainage issues before the development is built. And so that's what our goal is. And we've got all hands on deck trying to get on that board. The way the back to the centralization works is, this is of the wastewater plants. The trustee board always kicks things to a subcommittee, and they look at these questions in more detail. So that's why we have no information. It's like Jim said, it's the Monday before those 3 members of that subcommittee had a meeting, and they didn't get enough information. So we're pushing that on to next month. Other than that, those were all the notes that I had. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Well, I have one big question is in the public comments area. The comment, one of my comments, my first comment was not even referenced here, and I think it's important. Obviously, I attended the meeting and made the comment. The second, okay, was misstated in point of fact in your report. That's not what I said. You know, this is my comments were all on video, okay, and taped. And I would like my real comments inserted into this, into the minutes of this report, okay? And, you know, I'd like to just see if we can make sure that if not only myself, but residents, et cetera, accurately, quoted.
And Paul, I may have misunderstood you earlier. Our staff is responsible for putting the summary together. So
Okay,
if it's not correct, we would be the one needing to correct it and happy to do that.
okay. So I would just say, Jim, that, I did not do this extemporaneously. I read from pre-written comments. If you guys need that, I can give it to you, but I didn't talk extemporaneously because I wanted to be very precise. And, I'd like to get this included. And actually, I think my public comments should be shared with this board because I think they were important. One of the key things we talked about today with San Jacinto was a pipe that has been breaking, if you will, my word, breaking, failing, whatever you want to call it, on and off for quite a while. Some of my comments were around, and I'm not blaming anybody for that, that's what happens, but some of my comments were, one portion was about infrastructure, and my other had to do with our fiduciary responsibility as a board to our residents, okay? Not to the mud, but to our residents regarding what Mr. Bunch referenced when he was running for office regarding, the township acquiring the muds. So I'd like to see those comments read into the minutes and with accurate copies going to the mud directors for Mud 47 who weren't in attendance.
And what we can do, this is a summary and it is just an abbreviated effort, and we may have been incomplete. Obviously we were. So if you will get the statement that you read to Shelley, we will make sure that gets in the official minutes of the trustee meeting. And then we can also share that document with the Mud 47 directors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I do like Paul's idea about that qualified consultant. Can we discuss that now, Brian, or do we need to put it on our agenda?
This is Brian. We would need to have that as a separate agenda item.
Okay. And I guess we'll wait for that to discuss that a little bit further in the future. Okay. Is there anything else for the trustee report?
Not for me, but I'd love to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. So if I don't hear any other comments or questions, we'll count that as received. And we'll move on to number 21. Consider and act on authorizing development agreements, design, advertisements for bids, construction contracts, and/or change orders by developers on behalf of the district, acceptance of facilities and/or easement, site conveyances from developers, and receive development update.
Well, we only have a developer update out of all the things you just listed. So that probably can be abbreviated at this stage of our career together. But we do want to talk a little bit about the property up on FM 1488 again. We've listened to the comments of the residents at the last meeting and at this meeting. We understand your concerns. The two biggest concerns as we understand them is making sure that when development does occur there, that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that we abide by all the rules and regulations regarding drainage. The district has even considered going above and beyond the current regulations and maybe going to a higher standard than what the governmental entities are requiring. We can certainly discuss all those things with you, and we'll be willing to discuss those with you and the Woodlands Water. I know Mike Mooney is well versed in the rules and regulations, and also our engineer that would be hired to do the work. The other thing that was a major concern was why should the district pre-fund the development of the activities up there? Why would there why would the district want to put funds at risk, not knowing whether the developer could follow through on putting the $40 to $45 million worth of AV on the ground? And that's a very valid concern, and it's one we frankly share with you guys. When the bond was passed, we were under the assumption that the district, was intent on proceeding with that construction activity. I know now that that is not the case. So what we'd like to do at a subsequent meeting to this, either next month or the month after that, is come back to you and propose to do this development in the style that we have done development with you for the last 25 or more years. And that is to put an agreement in place called a Con-10, wherein the developer puts at risk its design dollars for all the design work that has to be undertaken for the water, sewer, and drainage facilities to be created. And then also put at risk all of our construction dollars. And then when AV is created, then the district is in a position to reimburse the developer for the AV that he has put on the ground. So that's the gist of what I'd like to say to you guys this evening. If you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to take them on. But I just want to make it brief tonight and say that we understand your concerns moving forward, and we want to come back with a proposal at a subsequent meeting.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Danny, you mentioned something that just kind of triggered an idea or a thought about the standards being, our drainage standards being beyond what's currently in place, probably by Montgomery County. I think that the Drainage Task Force is trying to get that. I mean, that was part of what Laura's talking about, getting stricter standards. It might be a good idea to start pushing that through the MUDs, right? Like, I know that it doesn't work if we do it and upstream they don't have it, but it shows that we're doing what we can. If we want to make that, if we want to do that, we should make it official, right? Because I don't want to be in a situation where we made this developer do A and then a different developer do B. Official, make it across the board a standard. We're going to adopt a standard. We'll adopt the standard. Okay, sorry. Any other questions or comments?
That's not a problem. Your county has adopted the new rainfall requirements, and we'll be adhering to the new rules of the county in that regard. So, like I said, we'll come back to you after we've analyzed the storm sewer system and the drainage system and the detention ponds required, and you will weigh in at that time.
One of the things I think is interesting about the county and the drainage plans that they approve, they got a lot of applications, I guess, at the beginning of, or just before 2019 ended. And the reason was, if you got your application in, then you could be grandfathered into the old rainfall data. So this doesn't apply to the 1488 development because of the newer one, but that's kind of one of the things I'm getting at with Audubon. It was approved before the Atlas 14 was required. So that's what's going on there.
Yeah, as we spoke earlier, Laura, I have to make a phone call. Something just 5,000 acres and no detention doesn't seem plausible to me, but maybe there's something that they know that I don't know.
We can talk on that one again, because
There's only one house on it. That's what.
Me and my buds are pretty worked up over it. So yeah, let me know if you can find out.
All right.
Okay. So I'm not sure if we need a motion there.
You don't need an emotion. It's just a report.
Yep. The report has been received. Update's been received. Moving on to item number 22, discuss any matters for placement on future agenda.
I had something I was thinking of. You know how we give residents relief from bills when there's a leak at their house that's unexpected? I'm wondering if there's any feeling if once we're live with the AMI and residents are getting feedback on how much water they're using. Would this board want to visit a policy where we would change that we're always giving relief because of that feedback that's coming from smart meters? So if you're open to that, then it's something we can put on a future agenda. And if not, then I didn't get a second, you know what I mean?
Well, my feeling on that is I would absolutely support that. Okay.
Would like to
Which
see
is
that
not,
addressed.
which is not to say that I think, we should eliminate, reimbursement for anything that might be, not on the customer side. Okay,
Well,
but once
Paul,
we have the
let's not-
capability, yeah, why not? I mean, we
Well, let's
should
not go too
modify our
far down
procedure.
because we have to discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay,
If he wants to put
great.
it on the deal,
Yeah,
it's,
let's put it on the agenda.
it's a proactive deal. Jim, if you don't mind, if there's some best practices that are already being developed around that, because I know there might be privacy concerns and other things to consider. That would be great. We can put that on the next agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm just making a note real quick here, sorry.
The other thing, I had written down in my notes of the course, what I want to say on the course for future agenda perhaps is we're moving towards extensometer. I don't think it's our place to push that right now. That's going to come from on high and try to get more political entities to contribute to that project. So I'll let Mr. Turco and Stinson and so on like that really drive a push for $1 million in getting an extensometer. But that's that one.
Okay. I noted earlier discussing the idea of the consultant in the case of the Woodlands Incorporating. Anyone else? Any other items? Okay.
Anthony, did you want that as an agenda item next month?
As agenda item, yes, please, so that we can discuss it. Okay, hearing nothing else. Item number 23, adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. All right, so I guess we vote on that too. Paul?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
And Jennifer?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month. Appreciate it.
Terrific. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.